Welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. I'm your host, Austin Becker, and this is your home for adventure, travel, addiction, recovery, the outdoor and ski industry, and of course, redemption. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. This week, I have a very special guest in the house. You guys have heard this man's name on the podcast before, Woody Hayward. Woody was my therapist when I first got sober back in 2018. I came to Foundation House in Portland, Maine, and got paired up with this crazy guy, and he set me straight. Without Woody in my life, I don't know where I would be today, and I thought it was only fitting to host you on the podcast while I'm out here in Maine. So without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell the audience what you're about and how you got here.
Hi, everybody. My name's Woody, and as much as Austin, with his kind words, it becomes a question of readiness, right? Like when you get a student, if you will, who's willing as opposed to willful, good things can happen, right? You let information in, you're willing to take suggestions, you're willing to let go of my old ways, and that's when things really become a blossom, if you will, and we flourish when a variety of factors, as were presented by him. I mean, nobody I've ever met in this business comes in on a winning streak, so there's that, right? So it was a question of timing. Unfortunately, in my past, New York City, grew up on a street corner, had all these preconceived notions about how life worked, and I resisted sobriety for 35 years. I knew I was in trouble when I was 20, and I didn't get into the program, into the halls of AA until I was 52. And largely because I don't like to lose, nor did I think that admitting complete defeat would suit me. You know, I was hell-bent on winning. So I tried every which way, and the book is clear, the big book, about the different ways we try to, no white wine, little red wine, just drink on the weekends, just no clear liquor, just, you know what I mean? Like whiskey and beer and no red wine. And, of course you throw in other substances. And I can remember my brothers giving up beer for Lent, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. Anyway, I struggled with admitting failure. That one kept me in the dark for a long time, 7 years actually. My first introduction to AA was in 2003. And I was working at the New York Stock Exchange with my older brothers, and I showed up after a 2-day bender, and they were like, "Are you in trouble?" And I'm like, "Yeah." But I kind of just did that because to keep them off my ass, Oh. And so I went away to this place called Marworth in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and they put me in detox. And they made me put my hands out, and they're as straight as they are now. But they told me to go to detox, which I threw a little hissy fit. And anyway, I had to do it. And there was a guy in there with a heroin addiction, and he was screaming for his mama. And there was another guy with sleep apnea, heavy-set fellow with a bottle of vodka and an 8-ball of Coke every day, or once a week. And anyway, they had to send him to another place, and I didn't get a night's sleep at all because I was staring at the tiles and counting the tiles on the floor, and I didn't sleep at all. And the next day, in my infinite wisdom, my alkalogic I checked myself out, AMA, because those guys were really screwed up. All I did was drink a couple of Budweisers and do a little bag of Coke every now and then.
And for the audience that doesn't know, AMA is against medical advice. It's a term that we use in the industry to say you're not ready.
You're AWOL.
Yeah, you're AWOL.
Right,
You're leaving.
right.
You're leaving when you're not ready.
And of course, I was an adult, and they couldn't stop me. I was 45 at the time. And anyway, that began the journey, right? Like this refusal to let what everybody else could clearly see. But it's almost as if I was the last one to know that I was an alcoholic. Like many of us, an alcoholic is the drunk on the Bowery in New York, or under the bridge, or the guy panhandling on the side of the highway. But this disease takes you from Park Avenue to the park bench and from Yale to jail. So I still had another rehab in me in 2006. When I checked myself out, I realized that, I was not forthcoming. I had difficulty in being vulnerable and letting people in. And so when I got home, after checking myself out, I went to work, and the boss said, "Hey, if you don't think you're like those guys, the bell rings for trading at 9:30. And he left me sitting in this office on the 45th floor overlooking Manhattan. And I kind of knew that I was an alcoholic and I really should go back there. And so long story short, I turned around and went back. And then I did this for 2 weeks. And my roommate said, if you don't say anything, they're going to keep you longer. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. What happened? Everybody got out in 3 weeks. I got out in 5. And then when I got home, I told my wife, you can't have wine in the house because I'm an alcoholic. And she said, you're the one with the problem. And so I had no idea what it really meant to be an alcoholic. And now that I am several 24 hours sober, alcohol is about drinking. Alcoholism is about thinking and behaviors. And that's where my alcoholism really shows up. It tended to amplify the already things in me that were off and not copacetic. And so my wife said, listen, I had a glass of wine with dinner a couple of months later. I had a sponsor that lived in the same building as me, and I was going to meetings, but I wasn't really quite savvy or aware of like what it really was that I was supposed to be doing. I thought I was an alcoholic because I drank a lot. I didn't realize that alcoholism is different than just being an alcoholic, right? And again, I started to fall back into the guy I knew best, the old me. And pretty soon my wife said, listen, man, you got to go. I can't have this in the house anymore. And my wife basically said, you and your Guinness and your cocaine, or me and the kids. And I said, see you later. And that was the next rehab in 2006, 3 years later. And of course, I continued to fight this thing with no solution, just my own. What I found, to be totally honest, right? Like, I love people that say that, let me be totally honest, as opposed to what? But I couldn't fix a problem with the same brain that created it. I needed outside help, but I wasn't willing to let anything in. Like, there is an answer. There is a solution. There is a way out. I thought I was doomed. And if I stopped drinking, who would I be? I was like an identity crisis. I mean, I was always the fun-loving, personality's big as Jupiter. And then at the end, people, I used to fill up a room. And then at the end, people were like, oh, shit, here he comes. What happened? And what happened is I take things and make them my higher power, no matter what it is. And I mainline them. It doesn't pick something, books, anything I take to the extreme. I only had 3 feelings back then. I had withdrawal, euphoria, and just hungover.
Yeah.
There were no other emotions. And as we know now, there's quite the gamut of emotions out there. That was probably one of the the major factors in my drinking was I always needed to put something in my system to change the way I felt. Being alone with my feelings was like, what?
Yeah, no good.
No bueno. So then 3 years later, I missed my brother's birthday, and he goes, "Are you all right?" I said, "No." And that was in 2009. So I'd been at this for 7 years. And in that 7 years, I became broke, busted, and disgusted, not to be trusted. And by that time, I had blown up all the bridges, not just merely burnt them down. And I had nowhere to go. And who could I turn to but my older brother, who said, "Okay, man, you're going away tonight." This is April 6, 2009. And here's $100. Go get some socks and underwear and a haircut. You're leaving tonight at 10 o'clock. And my mom, who was 86 at the time, is quietly sobbing in the corner, saying to me, "Where did I go wrong with you?" Because I'm one of 6 kids, right? And I'm the only one afflicted with this dis-ease. And I said, "Ma, it's nothing to do with you. You raised me right. I made some poor decisions, selfish decisions." And so anyway, I had $100 in my pocket. I got to the elevator in Mom's apartment building in Manhattan and called my Coke dealer. And he met me at the corner in the bodega. And I picked up 2 Heinekens and a bag of rocks and went to get a haircut. So what happened next is probably the thing, like my epiphany, like my moment of clarity. So I get into the hair salon there on Broadway and 207th Street, Manhattan. And I go into the bathroom, I do a couple of bumps, and I suck down a Heineken. I go out and sit in the chair, and Eduardo, my hair guy, "Hello, my friend, how are you?" And I look in the mirror, and my 17-year-old son is getting a haircut at the same time. And I see him in the mirror, and the Grand Canyon isn't close enough for me to jump into a hole so I can hide from him. I'm faced with this circumstance I could neither evade nor avoid. And I turn around, and with tears in my eyes, I look at him, and I saw myself in him. I saw my reflection. Yeah. And I thought to myself, "What the are you doing?" And my son looked at me, kind of recoiled at the sight of me, because by that time I weighed about 150 pounds and my eyes looked like 2 piss holes in the snow. And he blanched, and I said, "I got to go away again." He goes, as he was backing up, he goes, "It's all right, Pops. You take care of yourself. Do what you need to do." And kind of just scampered away. And I sat there looking after him thinking, what are you doing? And I don't know. I imagine those of us that stay on the path have a moment like that. Yeah. And those of us that stay long and sit all the way down don't forget that moment, because I'm just an arm's length away from the next, debacle. So they sent me to Portland, Maine, and I arrived here 22 days sober, and I was 52 years old, and everybody in my sober house was 20, and I sat with my head in my hands in my room like, how could this happen to the great and powerful Woodman? And I got a knock on the door, and there was a couple of the guys in the house, and they were like, "Yo, come with us." Now, I'm going to explain that one to you. They didn't say, "Hey, you want to go to a meeting?" And I would have went, "Nah, I'm all set." They said, "Come with us," which is what I tell our guys to do. Don't ask, just tell them to come with you. Because left to my own devices, I would have just stayed stuck in my room. What am I doing here? And my brother said, "Listen, there's $1,500 in your account. When that runs out, I hope you have a job." 2 beeps on the horn, hand out the window, and left me standing on the porch in Portland, Maine. And by the way, there's nobody here. There's only like 65,000 people here. There was 65,000 people on my block. So it was quite the culture shock. There was no noise. I couldn't sleep the first night because I couldn't hear the number 1 train on the L. There was no fire sirens and police cars, and I couldn't hear the bus wheezing down Broadway. And it was quite the cultural shock. But anyway,
Which university did you go to in New York? What do you say?
I went to UCLA, the University of the corner of Lexington Avenue, street education. But you pick up all these little phrases in the program, right? Which I have been accused of looking at a teleprompter that spits
High honors at UCLA.
these corners out, and the School of Hard Knocks graduation.
Yeah.
So.
So when you got to Maine, how long did it take you to finally put on that switch and say, this is what I'm going to do?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is, so because I am a arrogant, know-it-all New Yorker, I kind of assassinate everyone's character in my head and judge, like, who should I talk to? And look at that guy's got a nose ring. Look at that. And I find a way to keep them clearly away. But meanwhile, I'm like this.
Yeah.
As opposed to this. See what I did there?
Yeah.
And the first 90 days I'm not going to lie, were absolutely hard, difficult, living with other guys, 20 years old. And I would go into my boss's office, the guy that ran the place, Patrick, and tell him that we ought to get rid of this guy and that guy. And oh, by the way, let's get rid of Frankie and Jimmy and Bobby because they're not doing shit. And finally, he got so sick and tired of me, he turned to me and said, how about I get rid of you? And I went, me? But Mr. Joe AA. And then he said the thing that he said, you're 52, right? You're a New Yorker, you got like this personality. Do you ever think that because you're older, you might be able to help them? And by helping them, you might help yourself? Now get the hell out of my office before I kick you out. Now, while I admit that there was some truth in that, I walked out of there pretty stung and pretty pissed off, but I had to admit maybe he had a point. Maybe the way through this, instead of judging them like I did everybody all my life, maybe to get to know them might be the way out. And for those of you that are listening, you know exactly what I mean, because that is the way out. My life got really small because all I could see was me. It was kind of like glaucoma, that tunnel vision, and then probably the greatest gift that I've been given is the ability to see other people and be more loving and kind and compassionate. Things that I was born with, but somehow I got lost chasing, the Joneses or Wall Street, or, it was all about accruing and amassing and clutching and grabbing. And you know what? It just didn't work.
Yeah.
So like all of us, we are blessed with assets and liabilities. The book likes to call them flaws, defects. Yeah. Okay. Shortcomings is good, So I came in out of whack. And it's never going to be like homeostasis. It's going to always be, I always tell the kids, I go to church on Sunday and the baby, this newborn baby is screaming behind me. And I turn to my wife, listen to the lungs on that thing. Isn't that beautiful? And she goes, yeah, isn't that nice? And then next week, somebody shut that damn baby up, right? Like, so I live in this spiritual oscillation, and what I want to avoid all the time is the extremes, right? So prayer and meditation, the things that I've taught, the answers that I was given all those years ago are what I practice today, right? Like I get quiet in the morning. I have a routine. I read the Emmett Fox or the Daily Reflections, and I get quiet and I pray. My prayer life has changed. Right before, I would pray for the ABCs, the apartment abroad in the car, or the winning lottery numbers, or let's just say my prayers were self-centered, and only when I was in trouble, right? Like the dying man prayer, the foxhole prayer. Like, if you get me out of this one, and so now I pray for strength, and I mistakenly prayed for patience until one of my teachers told me, yeah, we don't pray for patience. We pray for opportunities to practice them. So it's been a quite humbling experience for me all these years later to be teachable.
Yeah.
And to be open, like I don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
And to pass on, like that's been my thing, right? Like I'm a gregarious, outgoing, personable kind of guy. And I was using those skills for a couple of yucks in the bar at 2 a.m. And looking back on it, it was quite shallow and not very um, meaningful or purposeful. So to be given the chance, so long story, let me go backwards. I stayed in the sober house for 26 months and I became a house manager and helped the guys. And obviously my boss saw something in me in that and asked me to go back to school, which I started at 54 years old and got my counseling and therapy license. And then I started to work here with him for these last 15 and a half, 16 years.
Yep.
Which has been, what a gift, right? Like I can use the gifts that I've been given to help others.
Yeah.
And I can't even put into words the gratitude for that opportunity on a daily basis. Hell, even like a year ago, I tried to retire and they're like, oh, the place would never be the same without you. So I get to come here and, do my thing and help the boys, meet them where they're at, and just try and help them with change, right? Because change is difficult. You've heard me before. The same guy that gets here, the same guy that leaves, it's not going to go well, right? So I'm a change agent, and being able to help. Now, I don't know if I help. I drop a lot of rocks in the pond, and sometimes I get to see the ripple. Hell, you're a tsunami, but I don't always get to see the ripple. But thankfully, the guys stay in touch with me, and it's been very rewarding, to take the guys to the soup kitchen, to pick them up on Sundays for my home group, to take them to meetings. In this place, while I'm dealing in recovery all the time, this place doesn't keep me sober. I have a sponsor. I have a home group. I go on commitments. I gotta, every day I wake up, step one is still true. Surrender is a daily thing, right? And for many of us, surrender, the connotation, so what I remember most is that when I told them I don't like to lose, they were like, yeah, but if you surrender, you win. One of those AA paradoxes, right? Like let go, but hold on, and winning. Like who doesn't want to be a productive, meaningful, purposeful life, abundant, right? Like I was under the mistaken impression that I could do that drinking and drugging, but I don't have that capacity. My father was an alcoholic. I don't know if I got the gene or the apple didn't fall far from the tree, but here I am. It's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Like if you put all the diseases on the table, I'm taking alcoholism.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm in remission.
Yeah.
For the moment. Not that I've been cured. It's never going to leave me as long as I don't put any alcohol, because then I have a peculiar reaction to it, right? Like the phenomenon of craving, like that famous letter from Dr. Silkworth in the big book, right? The doctor's opinion. I didn't know about the 3 parts of the disease, right? Actually, I've heard the 3 parts of the disease are Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So there's that, right? Like families and relationships are hard. Families of origin are hard. But change is possible, right? And I needed outside help. I tried to do it on my own and failed miserably. So like you said earlier, when you prefaced our meeting together here, when you've reached a point where you're willing to listen and absorb and try, right? Because this thing is all about action.
Sure.
Right? There's talk is cheap.
And I think an important thing to remember for anyone is that all of these like principles and these ideas go so far beyond just alcoholics and drug addicts. Like I say this to people all the time. If everyone in the world did the 12 steps of AA, we'd be a much happier planet. And all of these principles you can apply to anything. When I worked at this program, I used to tell clients all the time that they were coming in here and they were struggling with mental health things, never done a drug in their life. But you have that conversation with somebody and say, like, these are all transferable things. Every person on the planet could benefit from taking these actions in their life. And I think that is an important thing to remember, is that, there's people that listen to this podcast that don't do any drugs or alcohol, and maybe they're struggling with mental health, or maybe they're not. These are all applications that we can use in our life.
It's not so much, and you're right. You don't have to, maybe you have a food issue. It doesn't matter what it is. The behaviors are the same. I take it to the nth degree, whether it's shopping. Hell, I got a pen thing going on now. My wife was like, if you bring home another pen, I'm going to shoot you. Right? Like, I got a big bowl filled with, what do I need all these pens for?
You don't need any of them.
But it goes back to my lack of proportion, my lack of perspective. Take one, they're free. I take 5.
Yeah.
So I got this disease of more. Doesn't matter what it is. Ice cream. I have learned to eat an ice cream pint in 3 sittings. Because you know what happens when I eat the whole thing at one time? I don't feel good.
Yeah.
And
It's funny how that works,
and
huh?
those double stuffed Oreos, oi,
Sugalamink.
whole row, no good.
Yeah.
I limit myself to 4. Actually, I stopped buying them
Yeah.
because I got a sugar thing. I got a sugar problem.
Oh, me too. Yeah. I mean, in this life, I think we replace
Right. So it's that
one addiction for
it's
another.
that God hole, right? Like, what I need this to be. I need a Helly Hansen jacket to make my life complete.
No.
I just found out about Helly Hansen.
That's exciting for you, huh?
Yeah. But my point is, it's not in the next Oreo. It's not in the next promotion. It's not in the next new car. It's not, right? None of those things are going to fix me.
Yeah.
None of those things are going to fix me. And how do I feel complete and whole? Why was I always feel like I'm, doom and gloom, waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Like,
Yeah.
So self-sabotage is a whole nother topic, right? Like, let's put it this way. Alcohol and drugs never made me do anything better, just made me less ashamed of doing things poorly.
Yep.
So once you put down the substance, whatever it is, I admitted we were powerless over, plug something in, the dash is really big because no matter what the thing is, shopping, gambling, sex, food, pens, my life becomes unmanageable,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the dash is a really telling punctuation mark, right? Like in addition to the powerlessness over alcohol, and we try to hold it together as best we can.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the substance is, like you said it. And, mental health too. I mean, I have no opinion on medication. I mean, some people need medication to get to this spot, to get their head above water. I mean, many of us are in therapy. I mean, whatever it takes. Hell, for me, it took a village, as you might imagine.
Yeah. Same here.
But you can teach an old dog new tricks. As long as I'm breathing, I never am going to say, I don't have another recovery in me. Bullshit. Yes, I do. I would never limit myself to that. When it comes down to the beauty of the program is 24 hours. Like you can do anything for 24 hours. Excuse me. So just for today, I teach the kids, have a plan, work the plan, stick to the plan. Now, I had this placard on my desk, as you remember, that said that. And then it dawned on me that sometimes plans go awry.
Yeah.
So what to do? So then I stole this from the Marines. And on the flip side of the sign, I wrote, adapt, improvise, overcome, and persevere. So persevere is probably one of my favorite words because it means staying a course of action when faced with difficulty and adversity.
Yep.
Resilience is quite the pillar of my program because I thought I was washed up. Who's going to hire me? I'm never going to fall in love. I'm never going to be funny. All this, because this brain, I got a thinking problem too.
Yeah.
which you hear all the time, right?
Yeah.
And trying to get my head right was
This y'all got great. Right now.
okay. So, it's been a journey. Like I said, the road has been the journey. I mean, there's no destination, there's no graduation. Just for today, I try to keep it in the day, right? And learning to be present is really hard. So we do all sorts of things for that, right? Like meditation. I got into yoga and mindfulness, and of course, I don't do any of these things perfectly, right? I mean, I'm a lot better at it than when I was.
Yeah.
And I see the point. Before
Yeah.
I was like, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
So
I think an important thing to touch on is that word that you used earlier, and it's the foxhole. The foxhole is the idiom or the word that we use here at Foundation House to explain
what goes with community?
community. And what does that mean to you? How did it shape?
Okay, so this
your
is a
recovery?
war on addiction, and there's going to be casualties. The foxhole is always where near the action is. It isn't in the rear echelon.
Yeah.
So it's right where the action is. Urban, right? We're not in the woods or the boonies.
Yeah.
And there's going to be casualties. The foxhole, those guys in World War II, World War I, Revolutionary War, in wars in general, those guys, yes, they were fighting for flag, freedom, country, but they were fighting for the guy next to them.
Yeah.
And that was the missing ingredient when I got here, is this sense of community and camaraderie. And while we have been through the ringer and we've shared many of these horrific stories, many different doors end up in the same room. We shared a common, devastation to life and falling short and broken relationships and death and misery and despair and all these things. And that kind of like galvanized us. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have much hope when I got here. And I found the guys that were doing this thing. And so I stuck with them. You stick with the winners all the time.
For sure.
And they were doing what I wanted to do. I needed to get well. I needed to get my sons back in my life and start moving on. And these last, 15, 16 years have been quite rewarding, right? Like as a result of this fellowship,
Yeah.
outside in the rooms, those people are amazing. Hell, when I got married, I met my wife at an AA meeting and we got married upstairs. I met her in the church basement and we got married upstairs. That's some Cinderella shit right there.
That is some
You know what I mean?
Cinderella shit for sure.
Go figure.
I talk about that idea of community on a near daily basis. It's what saved my life. I'm in Maine right now because of community. I'm here because one of my best friends is getting married that I met here at Foundation House and had the opportunity to live with him for years. I had the opportunity to become close with his wife, soon to be. And
You're still friendly 6 years later.
and I'm a groomsman in his wedding. How fucking crazy is that?
That's awesome.
When I walked into your office 6 years ago, I didn't think I would be sitting across from you in a podcast.
Nor did I.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I was a bad person that needed some guidance, like seriously needed some guidance. And, that's why I stay close with you. That's why I send you messages. And
By the way, nobody's a bad person. You may have made some bad choices, but that doesn't make you a bad person,
yeah.
right? That's the difference between guilt and shame.
Yeah. And I talked about this a few weeks ago on the podcast with a guest. I was recently given what I think is the best compliment I've ever received. I'm driving in the car and I'm sitting across from Sarah and she looks at me and says, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And she said, "You have this ability of connecting people in a way that I've never seen before. The community that you've created in Colorado and how you let people in and host people and zero judgment." And I sat there for a second, and you were the first person I thought of. And I thought, yeah, that's the old woodman. And those are those lessons that I learned before all of this happened, a podcast and getting back to professional sports and traveling the world and all of these things that when I was sitting across from you, there was not a chance in hell. My thought was, I'm going back to Colorado. I know the dealers in Boulder. I got a car in California. I'll grab that. And you just kept saying, hey, let's 30 more days. Come on. And then 19 months went by. And I ended up working here for years, continuing that community and that camaraderie and having the opportunity to now sit across from you and have a conversation like brothers.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was in the foxhole. I was in the heart of the action. I was actually outside of the foxhole, kind of just running around.
Well, that's when you get whacked with a shovel when you stand up in the foxhole, because then you let the enemy know where we are.
Yeah, I was just dodging bullets out in the open fields. Yeah, running around.
But the key, traditionally or historically, I'm a great starter, lousy finisher.
Same.
Right? So I'm all set, but I'm not all set. This thing wants me alone or dead, ideally. And each day, I don't struggle anymore with it. In the beginning, it was hard to wrap my head around that. Like, this thing wants you dead. It's out in the parking lot doing push-ups, all this stuff they say. And I'm thinking, what? I don't want to live scared,
Yeah.
or afraid. I've been afraid, but it's more of a... So we come in here with low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and low self-worth. How do you get those back? Well, it's real simple. You see this? That's got to start to count for something.
Yeah.
Do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
That's how you get good self-confidence back. Be careful of promising, writing checks with your mouth that your ass can't cash.
Yeah.
Very easy. Slowly incorporate little bits, little W's. Ideally, the idea is to put your head on the pillow, clean and sober each night. That's a win.
Yeah.
That's a win. My definition of a great day, a good day, was when everything goes right and I stay sober. A great day, when nothing goes right and I stay sober.
Exactly.
So
we
got to wrap up.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, and it'll be the final token here. I was getting interviewed by a Denver news outlet, and it was for like young entrepreneurs and asking questions about how I started my business and everything. And one of the questions they asked was, how did you get over the imposter syndrome? And that was one of the, again, what is just stuck in my damn mind all the time. And that was a huge part of it. That self-confidence, that self-esteem was so low when I walked through these doors. When I walked into your office, there was nothing. I was 100 pounds overweight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pudgy wudgy.
Pudgy wudgy. Yeah. And I was knocking on death's door. And building that self-esteem took years. And being able to do this now, comes with a level of building self-confidence. And man, I couldn't talk I could talk a lot when I first came into Foundation House. It was all bullshit.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, like the Wizard of Oz, the curtain gets pulled back and you go, dude, you're busted.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And ultimately you realize that recovery is what you do when no one's looking.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't about everybody else. This is about the man in the mirror.
Exactly.
So it's quite the, eye-opening epiphany, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. So
It's insane. Well, now we have ourselves an audience. The boys
they've heard it all before.
Yeah. Boys are here for their group, so we'll wrap this up. But Woody, I can't begin to think what you've done for me and my life and my family. Told Big B that I was doing this, and it brought tears to his eyes. It's
I almost called him yesterday.
yeah.
I think I'm going to.
Yeah, he would love that. You created a special bond with my family, and
They're great folks.
yeah,
They gave you room. Most of the parents are in my operating room.
yeah,
You're no good to be in my operating room. You had your shot. It's my turn. Stay out of my operating room.
they were done with me after
Woody, he's all yours. No
yeah,
problem. I got
he's
him.
all yours.
I
Yeah,
got
I
him.
can't deal with this kid anymore. Too many years.
It
of
was a
this shit.
pleasure. Look at the gifts, man.
Yeah.
Look at the gifts.
Well, thank you, and
God is good.
thank you to all the listeners. Yeah, this will be coming out next week, so I
Appreciate
can't wait
it.
for everyone to hear this. And you've been a legend on this podcast over the years.
Enough.
Old Woodman.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Everyone knows the
Yeah.
the graduate from UCLA.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you, Austin. Good to be here.